It's the Brian Lehrer Show on WNYC. Good morning again, everyone. We have law professor Leah Littman digging into those four major Supreme Court decisions that came down last hour. And in about 20 minutes, she's going to come on with us and give us some analysis. She's still picking through it, so we're going to wait till Professor Littman has had a really good look. There's four decisions, and a few of them are complicated, and, they have lots of consequences. So we want to get it right. She wants to get it right. So we're not jumping into a quick analysis. Professor Littman will be with us in about 20 minutes. With us now, just before this Sunday's Pride March, Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum with her new book and Social Justice Project. After 32 years, Sharon Kleinbaum is now Senior Rabbi Emerita at the largest LGBTQ plus synagogue in the world, Congregation Beit Simchat Torah, on West 30th Street in Manhattan. Recent events, to give you an idea, included one last night called Jewish Drag Icons, Then and Now. And this being Thursday, they will have their weekly Thursday evening event in many different locations. This is her new social action project launched after the second Trump inauguration last year called Shine the Light, Beacon for Democracy. We'll talk about what these Thursday weekly events are. The book is called With All My Heart, Torah for Our Times. It's dedicated, as the inscription in the book reads, to Rabbi Kleinbaum's wife, Randi Weingarten, the American Federation of Teachers Union president. The inscription says in part, "You have taught me again and again that justice is not an abstraction, but a daily practice." So we'll talk about Rabbi Kleinbaum's book and the Beacon for Democracy campaign. But I will note that this is also a complicated time to be a Jewish leader of any stripe in New York or anywhere in the world. She was a Mamdani supporter in the mayoral election for that context, a Brad Lander supporter this week for Congress. And just yesterday, Rabbi Kleinbaum was quoted in a New York Times article about New York primary winners who were critics of Israel. Her quote is basically to ask everyone to reach out beyond their comfort zones and build coalitions. Well, she would see what she thinks that means. So here on Pride Week, Primary Week, and with the new book, there's a lot to talk about. Rabbi Kleinbaum, thanks for coming on. Welcome back to WNYC.
So happy to be with you, Brian. Thank you for all that you do. You just make such a huge difference in this city, certainly in my life and in the life of so many of us who are your fans. So thank you.
That is way too kind. Thank you very much. And that was a beautiful inscription to your wife, Randi Weingarten.
Thank you.
It must be a kind of constant lesson in justice being not an abstraction, but a daily practice, as you wrote it, when you're married to a union leader.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is. She's really amazing. Source of great inspiration for me.
For the uninitiated, what does it mean when you refer to Beit Simchat Torah as the largest LGBTQ plus synagogue in the world? How big is it, and what makes it an LGBTQ plus synagogue per se?
So CBST started in 1973, a few months after the first synagogue started in LA. And when it started, it was completely anathema to the Jewish community. None of the movements would accept it to join or affiliate. There were no rabbis who were openly gay that were being ordained. Obviously, no same-sex relationships could be celebrated in synagogues. And this small group of people in 1973 rejected the idea that they had to choose between being either openly gay or deeply Jewish. And they insisted on something which continues to inspire me today, which is we don't have to accept what are considered intractable limitations and try to be creative about solving those problems. And that's what they did. They had no idea what it would grow into. It was a group of mostly men at that time. And they had no idea what they were building. They just took that first step, which is an important lesson for all of us. And now this 30-some years later, CBST, as you said, is the largest in the world, and we have gay and straight and trans and bisexual and asexual and all different gradations, which honors the God-given truth that we have all been created in God's image.
Is it possible to say in a, radio soundbite length of time how the vibe is among your congregants, given all the progress in the 32 years, but also what's going on right now with respect to trans people and Trump and some other things?
Well, I think there's complete unity in responding to the hostility coming from the Trump administration. And hatred from the federal government is nothing new for our community. And I think that's one of the powers, the secret powers that the LGBT community has, is we were birthed in this modern form in the midst of great hostility. We lived, since there was any openness in the community, for 100 years in administrations that were hostile to us. So I think we have a lot of experience in what it is to create a joyous, love-filled community in the midst of hatred. And we now have to draw on those lessons and draw on those muscles to recreate that kind of strength in the midst of this kind of hatred.
The book is a collection of some of your sermons. There are many. Does something tie them together?
Well, I think what ties them together for me, and it was very interesting because I had congregants choose what would get actually included, and I think we ended up having very similar perspective, is that there's no division in my perspective between deep spirituality and social justice, that it's not that one is fostered at the expense of the other, but that a real integration of these things is what makes a religious life worth living for me, and I believe what God demands of all of us. But so I think each of them explores the ways in which our spirituality and our social justice commitments come from the same source, I would say.
So you're somewhat retired, if that's the right word for being emerita, from the synagogue, but not from your activism. You only recently founded your group, Beacon for Democracy, with its motto, "Everyday people can fight fascism and authoritarianism." What is Beacon for Democracy, and how are you fighting the fight now?
So thank you, Brian. So Beacon for Democracy, as you said, emerged from this second Trump administration in my realizing that despite the worst things that happen on a policy level and the cruelty and violence and evil we are surrounded by, we have to do things to accomplish two things that are essential right now. One is to save our own souls, to not let ourselves be crushed by the depression and the despair, to not just stay in bed under the covers, but to find ways to be in community in local, hyper-local ways. And then the second point is how to make sure that our disapproval, disagreement, and different vision of what this country could be is visible. It's not enough to stay in our living rooms or in our houses or apartments and, yell at the TV or yell at our partners or our family members or friends.
Or post on social media.
Or post on social media. We need to do some things that are in real life with other human beings. And the idea is very, very local. You don't need huge numbers of people. Evoking the memory of really the first responders that we did during COVID of 7 o'clock banging pots and pans every week on a Thursday. And we chose Thursday so as not to violate or impinge on the holy days for Muslim, Christians, or Jews on the weekends. Take 30 minutes, not longer than that, 30 minutes where you live, and go outside with a sign that expresses what you're feeling that week and what your vision is. And so I have one here in Inwood, Brian, where you know that I live, and they're all over the city. Sometimes there's only 2 people, but every single week we have 2 people on the Upper East Side. Their mobility is very limited. They're not going to ever be able to go to a big demonstration on their own, but they want to be part of this resistance. They want to be part of mapping forward. So they go outside for 30 minutes every Thursday with their signs and wheelchair. And they talk to their neighbors. They watch people pass by. There's negative, there's positive. We have a woman who's 105 years old in Florida,
Wow.
Edith, who has never gone to a protest in her life. Every morning she wakes up and asks her daughter Sharon, is it Thursday yet? She gets wheeled outside onto either her little, in front of her apartment complex and holds her signs that says what she believes in for this world. So the idea is to create something that's a bridge from the big demonstrations. It doesn't require travel. And what it ends up doing is you end up being in conversation with your neighbors. And it's also fun, which is a really important task.
And
No
I
one
see
can
that.
do everything. No one can do everything, but everyone can do something. So what we're trying to do with Beacon for Democracy is to create the something that everyone can do, not just the activists, not just the lawyers, not just people like my wife, who's the head of a union. She's a lot she can do. But what can we, who are the regular people, do? And so this has been very moving and very inspiring for a lot of people who have participated.
And I
And we have a
see.
website, beaconfordemocracy.org. If folks want to go, they can join a group that exists. They can stand outside. And every Monday I do a Zoom for folks to, we teach things, we listen to music, we sing. We also prepare for the next Thursday and go over what happened the previous one.
And I hear that you're trying to roll this out nationally with that example from Florida that you gave. I see
Yes.
that even just in the city, you have ones this evening scheduled for the East Village, the Upper East Side, Forest Hills in Queens, Riverdale in the Bronx, Park Slope in Brooklyn. And listeners, if you're just joining us, my guest is Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum, now Senior Rabbi Emerita at what is called the largest LGBTQ plus synagogue in the world, Congregation Beit Simchat Torah on West 30th Street in Manhattan, discussing Beacon for Democracy, her new activism project, and her new book, With All My Heart, Torah for Our Times, as well as some events in the news. And so on your place as a progressive rabbi in New York right now, let me quote a line from a religious news service article last year during the mayoral campaign. It said, among progressive Zionists, the most prominent rabbi to support Mamdani is Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum. So just to fact check, do you call yourself a progressive Zionist? Do you use the word Zionist? And did you support Mamdani for mayor?
Yes, yes to both of those things.
So, go ahead. No,
Sorry.
you go.
Yeah. So, I live in a world which is losing a lot of oxygen these days, which is a narrow world which is dedicated to nuance. And that is it's not an easy place to be, and I certainly won't run away from that. I get attacked, very strongly from both the left and the right. But I feel very strongly that we have to create models in which we can carry multiple truths at once. We can support somebody like Mamdani for the many good things he's doing as an elected official and a leader, and also be critical of the things I disagree with. There's never been a mayor in the history of New York in which I've been deeply engaged, with whom I've agreed on everything. And I do believe that anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, hatred, and violence is a deep and profound problem right now. But I want this mayor to be part of solving it, and that's what I'm still hopeful for. And the way that he has inspired a generation of young people to see that government can do good things in a world in which we have a federal government which is so corrupt and just steals from all of us in order to enrich a very small group of loyalists. I feel like that alone deserves a lot of support and encouragement, and I agree with much of his policies. He and I don't agree about Israel, although we do agree on the criticisms of what the current Israeli government has done. I've spent a career, since the 70s, I've been engaged in social justice work related to Israel and Palestine, and I believe there is no future except a shared future between Palestinians and Israeli Jews, and that has been my position for 50 years. And we have now a government in Israel, like we have a government here in the United States, which is corrupt, extreme, in the case of Israel, does tremendous damage, but I'm still a patriotic American, and I still am committed to an Israel which is full of good people trying so hard to fight against a global wave of fascism. And I'm still hopeful that we'll be able to have an America I can be proud of, and I'm really hopeful we can have an Israel that we can be proud of, in which we create a land, an area in which there are 7 million Palestinians, 7 million Israeli Jews that live there. Nobody's going anywhere. How do we create a future that's full of security, liberation, prosperity for everyone? That's my bottom line question.
When you said a minute ago, a shared future for Israelis and Palestinians, does that mean a one-state democracy for all country there, which is, I think, the Mamdani position?
I'm very active I have been historically active in the support for two-state solution, which I think at this stage is the most likely to produce peace and prosperity for both peoples in a way without a bloodbath, which is what we all fear so terribly. But ultimately, what the political structure is has to be determined by the peoples living there. And I'm just supportive of all the elements inside of Israel and Palestine which are working toward that shared future. And there's a lot of debate and discussion about what the exact details of that are. Most important is that there has to be an assumption of the humanity of both sides. And I believe were that to be possible, the solutions would emerge.
I'm curious if you're seeing in your congregation, and I don't know the age range or percentages in your congregation, but if you're seeing a changing relationship among the younger people to even the idea of Zionism, the idea of Israel as a Jewish state, since, especially the period after the Hamas attack in 2023 and the Israeli responses in Gaza and the light that shined on the pro-Palestinian movement. The argument, of course, goes that what Zionism really was, or at least also is, in addition to liberation for Jews who've been oppressed for 2,000 years everywhere else they've been, other than their ancestral homeland, is settler colonialism, that hundreds of thousands of Jews from elsewhere flooded in after World War I with the Zionist goal of creating a state where they have guaranteed political power. And a lot of younger Jews are accepting that narrative and going, wow, this isn't like the little Israel, from the movie Exodus or whatever. Yeah. It's really this thing that actually, if you look at it, is actually pretty undemocratic at its root. Are you hearing that kind of thing from your younger congregation members, and if so, how do you address it?
This is true throughout, the universe, the American universe, certainly the LGBTQ world. Look, for younger people, Israel was never a weak, vulnerable state for which Jews had to pray for its very survival, and that its existence protected Jews. For most younger people, including Mayor Mamdani, who was only known in Israel, which has been Netanyahu's been in government for almost 20 years. The social net of Israeli internal society has been privatized and destroyed by Bibi. His hatred of Palestinians has totally governed his policies, including putting into government basically the equivalent of the head of the Ku Klux Klan are ministers in his government. So I understand how younger people will see an Israel that just looks like a mini America. The colonial argument, look, every country is founded in problematic ways. It's not, and that goes for including America. America was founded with genocide of the native peoples and enslavement of African people. But guess what? We keep believing in the possibility of moving forward and expanding rights. Those things don't make me say, therefore we have to get rid of America. Those things make me say we have to keep building an America in which rights are expanded and groups are given access to full equality. And I'd say the same thing about Israel. And what I think becomes anti-Semitic is when those standards are applied only to Israel. I mean, and I think that the international standards should be applied to every country, including China, Israel, Sudan, etc. So I think the issues that we're all concerned about, or many of us of my generation are concerned about, of course, is looking at what does it mean when these criticisms are launched only at Israel or in ways that are not nuanced. I think the criticisms are fair and valid, and I don't object to them. I just object when they're the only ones there, or when it is made to look like Jews everywhere are responsible for the behaviors of a government. My friend and colleague, Rabbi Jill Jacobs, writes very brilliantly, I think, that if a Chinese restaurant were attacked in Flushing, run by two older Chinese people because of the behavior of China towards the Uyghur Muslims, nobody in New York would say that that makes sense, right? That it's a Chinese restaurant owned by these Chinese Americans who are trying to run it. But if an Israeli restaurant in New York is attacked because of the behavior of the Israeli government, somehow there are those who will say that it was an acceptable way to register their political position.
In the Times article yesterday on Jewish leaders' reactions to the primary results, I'll read the paragraph with your quote for our listeners, or I'll read your quote in which you said, "I am hopeful that the candidates who are mayor endorsed now go about doing the work of building coalitions. We need everybody to reach out beyond their comfort zones and figure out how we can bring New Yorks together, and I am counting on elected officials to help do that." So how are you calling on those presumed incoming members of Congress to reach out beyond their comfort zones, as you called it?
Yeah, I think we all need to be doing that, but particularly the elected officials who, by the way, this is a very small election, this primary election, but who have been elected. What we need for them to do is model what it means in language and in action to reach out to communities who maybe didn't vote for them or with whom they have conflict, and to create settings in which they can sit down with real conversations and lower the temperature. We need to focus on what's happening in the midterms in November, and we need to focus on the health of our city. And we need to start by looking at the humanity of each of us. Look, two of those who we're sending to Congress, Brad Lander and Micah Lasher. By the way, I'm also a co-founder and board member of New York Jewish Agenda, and both of them are New York Jewish Agenda. Both were board members, and Brad was one of the founders of it. Our liberal Zionist organization. So both of them are two of the people New York has chosen to send to Congress are liberal Zionists. And we have to remember that it is a nuanced, complicated story we're facing, and we need all of us, those of us who live in our own worlds, need to use language that lowers the temperature, uses curiosity to listen to people who are different and saying different things from us, and find language to say we can agree to disagree. And look, we're facing midterm elections that are essential. And I want to say one last thing. We know that from studying history, the way the National Socialist Party, the Nazis, were elected, got into power in the 32-33 period, was because all the other groups did not join together. That the Nazis never had a majority voting bloc, but the other groups were so busy fighting each other, they could not unite to get rid of the Nazis, to eliminate the Nazis from the election.
Sure.
So let that be a lesson for us today.
So I'll let you come back to one more thing from your book to wrap this up. You have a sermon there from 2016, I believe, called Gandhi, Buber, and Torah, in which you say you've spent as much time studying Gandhi as studying Torah. Do you get the same lessons from both, or different complementary ones?
Well, I think there are some very, very deep connections that for me work at a high level, which is we start by recognizing the humanity of everyone. Gandhi felt very strongly that our job was to persuade our opponents to become our allies, not to crush our enemies. And the idea of approaching people with whom we disagree with deep understanding and commitment to their humanity is a deeply Jewish and a deeply Gandhian concept. And there are those, of course, we have in India a Hindu nationalist who would not behave that way, and we have in Israel a prime minister who does not behave that way. But we must insist that recognizing the humanity of all is at the center of what it is to be a spiritually mature person.
Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum, after 32 years, now Senior Rabbi Emerita at the largest LGBTQ plus synagogue in the world, Congregation Beit Simchat Torah on West 30th Street in Manhattan, and author now of the book, With All My Heart, Torah for Our Times. Thank you for joining us. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you.